we're driving through western Iowa this afternoon. We've been on the road for, well, just about 3 hours, it says. Gone almost 200 miles. On our way to Denver this evening, so we got about another 600 to go, according to our Google Maps that's displaying here on the CarPlay. And I wanted to show you one thing, actually two things this afternoon, briefly. The first is that the highway mileage, which has been a big question about the Ford F150 Power Boost Hybrid. If you notice, our highway mileage, highway MPGs today, which is on the far right, I'm sorry, it's not on the far right, it's in the second from the right, in the middle row of our display. It shows 18.2 average MPG. Look right above it. Do you see that gauge that says PSI? That's the boost gauge. And since we're going uphill here, it is into the boost, and it's showing, I don't know, 6 or 8 or 10 PSI. Anytime you see that turbo starting to generate boost, that's the truck saying to the engine, hey, I need some help getting up this steep mountain grade here, or this steep incline. It's not very steep, but, you know, when you're going 77, almost 80 miles an hour, yeah, the engine will need a little bit of help pushing it up the grade. And that's when it brings in the boost. You notice those wind turbines, those are going at top speed here in western Iowa, and they're oriented to the north, which is across the highway. So we've got a very stiff crosswind coming in from the right, again, to our north. Those wind turbines are going very fast, which signifies, again, that the wind is blowing pretty damn hard. And we've got lane keeping assist on. That is the blue halo around the picture of the vehicle. And so it's driving the truck. I'm not going to take my hands off the wheel, but you may or not be able to tell. It's making a lot of corrections on the steering because of how hard we're getting blown around by the wind. But it's doing a very good job keeping the truck in its lane. You can see the antenna blowing around a little bit in the wind. And again, the truck's not having a lot of trouble with it. Some of these 18-wheelers, you can see them getting pushed around. And you can hear it. I don't know if you can hear the wind blowing. It's blowing pretty damn hard this afternoon. But that's what happens out here in the plains, the Great Plains. And so again, the whole point of this is to show you, if you've got an F-150 with lane keeping on it, it's just not going to have an issue, even with a real stiff crosswind blowing. It will keep the truck centered in the lane. You can take all that drama out of your life, you know, that you would normally have to deal with from when the truck's getting pushed around. You can kind of see, somewhat to some extent, the 18-wheeler there getting pushed around. And we're just not having to deal with it. Again, at various points you can see the truck making corrections on the steering wheel. And just kind of going a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. And you can also feel the truck a little bit getting pushed around. But the steering is not having to make a ton of large corrections. The truck does not get thrown off by that much crosswind. And we've also driven this truck with a small trailer, a 12-foot utility trailer, fully enclosed, 7 or 8 feet high. I don't think we've ever seen the wind turbines turning this fast. I guess there's a lot of weather today and tomorrow, going through the southeast, tornadoes and hailstorms and all kinds of trouble. And we are just to the north of it. Yeah, these turbines look like they're about to hit the red line. other thing you'll notice when you're on the highway with this truck, it is a 3.5 liter EcoBoost engine, twin turbo V6, hooked up to an electric generator that can both take power out of the drivetrain, like when you're slowing down or you're going down a steep hill, and it can put power back into the drivetrain when you are accelerating. And that's where the hybrid can help your MPGs a lot. But it really mostly does you good in the city, not so much on the highway. The reason it doesn't do you much good on the highway is because there is so much drag that this truck is facing that any electricity that the hybrid system might be able to capture, like on a slight downhill, it goes out the window very shortly afterward. You don't do a lot of coasting. In a more aerodynamic vehicle like a sedan, like a Tesla, yeah, you can recapture a ton of energy when you're coasting and then put it back into the drivetrain. And that's the whole purpose of the Tesla, to be the most aerodynamic car possible. I think the Model S has like a 0.23 drag coefficient, and that's exceptionally good. But a pickup truck, absolutely not. Nothing remotely close to it. We're gonna set our distance to where we're backed off from this truck as much as possible. You can this button right here that you can hit, that will adjust your following distance. But no, again, you just lose so much energy from the drag that the truck is experiencing that the hybrid system doesn't help you on the highway. And really, again, if you're going moderate speeds and you're not going up and down that much of a steep incline, even the turbos aren't going to come into play that much. So right now we're going downhill somewhat. You see those trucks blowing in the wind. We'll back off a little more here. And going downhill, obviously the turbo isn't engaged. The hybrid system might be capturing a little bit of energy, but not much. And then it's immediately going to put it back in, and you're going to lose that electricity once we hit the flat here, which we just did, and then once we start to go back up this next incline. Again, the hybrid doesn't really help you on the highway. You see, in 198 miles we've driven, less than 1 mile has been electric. So that's like a 0.5% of our travel has been done thanks to electricity. And so again, now we're going up a slight incline. You see the boost start to creep up a little. It's probably at about 6 or 8 pounds of boost, maybe 8 or 9 pounds of boost. And when it's in the boost, it's burning a lot of gas. That's the whole point of a turbo, to forced induction, to push a lot more air into the engine, and then that allows you to burn a lot more fuel. So now we've gotten to the top of the hill, we've crested it, and the boost drops off back to nothing, because you don't need boost to push the air into the engine when you're on a downhill, because the engine doesn't need much air because it's not burning hardly any fuel. But there it is. Again, not much of a hybrid effect. Not really much reliance on the turbos. If this thing didn't have a turbo, for steady state highway cruising, it would be fine. You just hear the engine working a little more. It might have to downshift. It's been in 10th gear almost the entire trip. And it's 75 or 77 miles an hour. The engine is turning just under 2,000 RPM. This actually has pretty short final drive gearing. It's got a 373 final drive. And you have to get that, I think, with the hybrid. It doesn't give you a choice. With other variations of the F150, you can get a taller rear end, final drive ratio on the axle, and a 355 or a 331, and that will allow you to run at lower RPMs in top gear. But the 373 is what you get when you buy the hybrid. And as a result, again, you see we're turning almost 2,000 RPM in top gear at 75 or 80 miles an hour. No big deal. You know, it's not that. It's not like you're running 411s or 456s and the engine's going like 3,000 on the highway. But it is a pretty short final drive ratio. And we're surprised that you don't have a choice, you know. It might be because of the max towing package, which we have as well. But, you know, in our opinion, if you got a 10-speed transmission, why do you need such a short rear end? You know, such short axle final drive ratio, such short axle gears. You know, because, okay, fine, you get a 331 or a 355, and if the engine starts to lug and the RPMs come down, guess what? You get downshift in the 9th gear. This thing has 3 overdrives. We think, if I remember right, 6th gear is a direct drive, 1-to-1. Either 6th or 7th, and then you have 8th, 9th, and 10th that are overdrives. So that being the case, why do you need such aggressive axle gears? Such a short final drive? Hard to say. I guess somebody thought that was what you needed, but there we are. So average MPGs, it just came down to 18 over the course of 200 miles, and it was almost up to 19 maybe 20 minutes ago or a half hour ago. So we lost a lot of mileage, a lot of MPGs in the last, you know, 20 or 30 minutes of driving. Probably because the inclines, the rises are getting a little bit more pronounced. You know, in eastern Iowa, you don't go quite as far uphill and downhill. And here in western Iowa, yeah, you're going a little bit further up and downhill. And again, on those uphill stretches, you start to get into a little more boost, which starts to kill your consumption. Yesterday, we did, I think, 450 miles from southeast Michigan, through the entire state of Michigan, through Indiana, through Illinois, and then about 60 miles into Iowa City, and that was mostly flat. And because it was mostly flat, you know, this thing was in top gear the whole way, and it didn't hardly ever once get into the boost. And so our average MPGs for a 450 mile trip was 20.6. And now you see in the last 20 or 30 minutes of driving through, you know, steeper up and downhill grades, the MPGs have taken a hit. A pretty substantial hit. Wouldn't be surprised if it drops down into the 17s here shortly. Wouldn't be at all surprised. But, you know, once again, we cannot complain because you don't buy a pickup truck to save gas. You buy a pickup truck to do work. See, there it goes, 17.9. That's our MPG for the day. In 3 hours and 205 miles of driving. And it's safe to say that yesterday, where we hit 20.6 MPGs over 450 miles of highway driving, between 70, 75, 80, and not quite 85, probably 82 or 83. You know, your normal highway speeds where you're keeping up with traffic. That was an exceptionally good number, 20.6. 17.9, I'm not complaining. You know, it is what it is. And this truck is fighting really hard against the crosswind. Again, you might not notice it, but the wheel is constantly making little fine steering corrections. And you can see that antenna just getting blown around in the wind. All right, well, thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon. Maybe we'll talk to you later. With any luck, this evening we'll be in Denver.